feel like I went throughout my entire life knowing that God was everywhere, and his
Yeah, the
omnipresence.
omnipresence. Yeah.
Yeah, and not understanding his manifest presence.
Mm.
And his manifest presence is when he actually chooses to dwell somewhere in a certain place at a particular time, in a particular form,
Yeah.
and it's completely different. There's a space in my house that recently became clean because of a storm that we had a year ago. We had a storm, we had a
Mhm.
flood that came through our neighborhood. It was a national disaster. It ruined everything. We had 2 feet of water in our basement, and it
Oh
was it was
man.
really high. Yeah, destroyed everything. So we
Wow.
had to clean it up, right?
Yeah.
God was making space.
Mm.
He was
Yeah.
making
Right.
space. He was making himself a space in my house, and I didn't even know it.
Turn this up. Turn this up. Your professional development is one of the keys to your career success. When you combine your desire to grow with actionable steps, your journey to success becomes an incredible reality.
Hi, I'm Paul Ferranbi, and welcome to Incredible Paul Leadership, where we learn how to become the most incredible versions of ourselves by learning from each other. Today, I have the honor of having Jimmie Miller on the show. He's a multi-talented, multifaceted individual. He's an ex-professional breakdancer, photographer, and web developer. That's just a little bit of what he does, but Jimmie, how about you introduce yourself the way you would do it?
Yeah. So first off, I want to start with I am a believer of Christ Jesus.
Yes.
First and foremost, I'm a husband. I'm a father of 3 girls, and I love all of my girls. That includes my wife. And so I, like you said, a web developer, photographer, videographer, ex breakdancer, mentor, mentee, web developer.
Yeah.
And now I'm adding to my belt. I feel like I'm adding to my belt a speaker of
Mm.
the sort. So yeah, yeah, God is crazy, and I'm excited to jump into this and give people some game. So yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on the show. Like, really, what you led off with. I'm a person of faith as well, so I know that's gonna come out in what we talk about. But it sounds like you've done a lot of different things. And then
indeed I have.
speaking is one of the reasons why I know we had talked initially before, but then I heard you speak at our young adults group, and I was like, man, I gotta have you on the show. So I
Yeah,
was like, I gotta have you. But kind of walk me through like what came first as far as Jimmie. What were you attracted to first, and like kind of like walk me through this journey.
yeah. So my story really starts, I think, with dance. So
Okay.
I first of all, I grew up in church,
Mm,
but I was not a believer. I was one of the people that went to church and I played a role
okay.
because my mom was the praise dance leader at the time, which is how I fell into dance because my mom was a dancer and she was in leadership in dance at my previous church. I started out praise dancing and I hated every bit of
Wow.
it. Yeah, didn't like it because it was too girly. And then they
Okay.
introduced a guy named Anthony Peebles. Shout out to Anthony Peebles. Came to my
Shout
church
out.
and started miming. And I was like, Mom, let me
Oh.
go mime. Yeah. So pantomime, they have white faces and white
Yeah.
gloves, and they do a lot of like pop
Yeah.
in. It's very expressive.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got into actually breakdancing. That led me down a path to breakdancing because it was
Mm.
more so the pop in and stuff like that. And then at the time, You Got Served was a big deal. And then I went to high school and I went to my first high school dance. And that's where I really discovered like it was real. Like You Got Served was real.
Yeah.
I didn't know people actually did that stuff until my high school dance.
Okay.
And I was watching these guys in a circle like freestyle and do all the crazy movements you see on TV. I was like, people actually do this in real life? Like this is nuts. And so there
Yeah.
was this one guy in particular. His name was Jerry. Shout out to Jerry. I told him this story too.
Yeah.
He was the reason why I started dancing. So he's in the middle of the circle and he's killing it. Crowd's
Wow.
going crazy. He does his move where he goes to his back. He does a kip up and then back up, and a kip up and back up. And then on the last one, he freezes like mid air,
What?
like hanging back, and the crowd goes nuts. They go absolutely bananas. And he was battling some guy. I don't even remember who he was battling, but everybody was Jerry, Jerry, like they were
Yeah.
hyped, and I was watching everybody, watching how excited everybody was. And I was like, I have to learn how to do that. So I went home and I studied all of the You Got Served and Usher and Omarion and Michael Jackson that I could, and I came back at the next dance prepared. But that's my story about how I started dancing.
Okay, no, that's really cool. Really interesting that at the beginning you hated it. Not even that you're like, I'm not sure about it, but you're like, absolutely not. This is not what I want to do. That's pretty funny. That's really funny.
Yeah, and it really snowballed because so from there I started breakdancing, and then the next thing I know, I was teaching hip hop at a studio, at a dance studio.
Wow.
Like, yeah. And so it snowballed into me teaching at a dance studio. I went to college. Long story short, man, I grew up in church, and now I'm on campus, and I have all this esteem, sort of like this name. And one of the so people start to look at me to like for me to get to the party, to start the party. I became the life of the party. And I remember one night at one of these parties where people were waiting on me to get the crowd hyped to come out and to dance and to do my thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting up against the wall, and I'm watching all these people pour in. And there's this awkward darkness about it. It's just really dark. It's a party. So, you know, that party scene is already dark. Like it's a dimly lit room.
Yeah.
But this was an extra amount of darkness.
Oh, wow.
An added darkness. And I'm watching people like Joe. It was in slow motion. People throwing drinks back.
Wow.
Supposedly having fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, and the first thought I had was like, I know there's more to life than this.
Wow.
I know there's more to life than this. And the Holy Spirit, clear as day, said, you know better. And he said, you know there's more to life than this. And that was it.
Are you looking for a place to continue to grow and develop, especially in your leadership? How about connecting with others who feel the same way? Hi, I'm Paul Ferrandi, aka Incredible Paul, and I've got great news for you. The Incredible Paul community is for people who desire to become the most incredible versions of themselves. The community is for individuals who are goal-driven and action-oriented. This community is dedicated to leadership and personal growth, especially in going deeper in your career, starting a business, or developing a business. Join me in becoming the most incredible version of yourself. Go to incrediblepaul.org/community to join the waitlist and sign up. INCREDI Paul.org/community. Join the waitlist. I can't wait to see you there.
And so I left that party, but I was like, man, like I was rocked to my core because I was like, it's so weird, but I understood it. And I had a friend that had been trying to get me to go to church with her for however long it was that she was trying to get me to go to church. And I just kept turning it down. I was like, nah. Then finally, after that incident, the very next Sunday, I decided to go to church with her. And so this guy is at the front of her church, and he's prophesying, and he's like, you know, he's delivering people. I don't know what all is happening, but in my mind, because I'm so churchy, I'm skeptical too. I'm a recovering skeptic. I'm like, here we go again. I'm sitting in the back of the church like this.
Yeah. Let
me guess.
Yeah.
He gonna catch the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
She gonna shout. She gonna fall out, you know, and it was kind of one of those things like I've seen this before, kind of attitude that I had.
Yeah.
And she takes me by the arm and she's like, you got to go up there. I'm like, I ain't going up there to get prayed over, but to get prophesied over, like, you know, air quotes, because I'm mocking him. But I didn't know that would be the moment my life would be changed forever.
Wow.
She grabs me. She grabs me by the arm. She drags me up to the front, stands me in front of this dude that I've never seen before. And this dude just starts telling me about myself.
Wow.
And that's what's scary, is that he told me about myself, stuff that I was like, how you know that? Like you've been tracking me, bro.
Yeah, right. It's like, where the hidden cameras?
Like, yeah. And I never saw him after that again, which is crazy too. Well, I ran into him one other time on campus, but he didn't even seem to remember.
Wow.
So anyway, He told me, and the things he told me was like, he said the same thing that the Holy Spirit had said to me on that Friday.
Wow.
He said, you know better. And I was floored. I was like crazy. I was like, my heart was pounding out of my chest.
Wow.
It was crazy. He said, you know better. He said, you know, he's like, you know me. Like it was as if he was God directly and talking to me. And then at times it would be like he heard God say. So it was like he was switching back and forth between third and fourth person, which was out my mind. I'm so skeptical that I was observing all of this. I'm like, oh, this dude ain't real. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
it's like he can't even talk straight. But
right, yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, but little did I know, if you go and read the prophets, they do talk like that. And they do switch from third to fourth person like that, from first to third person. And I was taking Old Testament literature class because I was so freaked out after that, that he said that same thing that the Holy Spirit had just said to me that Friday. And he was telling me, he was like, you got a gift to speak, and that I'm going to speak over many, and that I'm going to speak over a lot. And I'm so skeptical because I'm like, what is many? Many can be 3 people. Many can be 5 people. You know, it's like many is more than one. That's all you need to know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So, but I know it. I think he meant more like thousands, maybe, but I'm not sure. But he prophesies over me. I'm freaked out. I'm taking an Old Testament literature class. I go take what just happened to me to my Old Testament literature professor. And I told him the same thing. He was like, well, like either you ran into a really good faith or you had a real encounter. And I think you have a real encounter. And I was like, wow. Like, sheesh.
Yeah,
it was
seriously.
just, you know, heavy.
Yeah, that's
so.
That's super heavy. Because from going from being a skeptic and really sitting back to being transformed.
Yes. I've had a life, and from that point on, I've had a life of series of things like that happening where someone walks into my life, tells me that I'm supposed to be this like speaker person, preacher, that I shy away from the word preacher because I don't think I'm supposed to be a preacher. But but they all identify me as having the gift of speaking, and that I'm supposed to speak over people, and then kind of like disappearing. And so I've had series after series after series of that, and now most recently at one of the photo shoots that I was supposed to do, that we were doing, me and my wife were doing together. Shout out to the Jewel Warriors. I don't know how, I don't know what it was. It was God's manifest presence was in the room, and it turned into a full-on worship session.
Wow.
We were worshiping, praying. We were playing Christian music. I really don't remember the songs that were playing, but everybody just started worshiping and praying for each other. And just, you know, it was an amazing moment. And again, a woman pops out, starts prophesying, says the same thing all over again about me being a speaker. She said, "You're more than Jimmie the photographer." She says, you are here to speak. And I was just like, wow, like floored. So, and then a week after that, I ran into a different prophet that said the same thing at the mall. So it's like, confirmation after confirmation. It just got to a point where it's like, okay, now I'm just running from it. So
it's
now
like
whatever it
Jonah
is,
moment, it seems like.
It was like, either are you going to hear this? Are you going to accept this? Are you going to walk into this? And I was like, I'm just like, sure. So right now, I think, if I'm really honest, I've had so much confirmation around the topic of being gifted with speaking and that I'm supposed to speak to a generation, that I actually used like getting confirmation as a crutch. Also, like whatever door you want me to walk through, I need you to reveal the door. I need a sign, you know, and I use that as a crutch, as a reason not to pursue it.
I can understand that.
So it's like I use that to basically just procrastinate
Mm-hmm.
when I should have been running toward full force ahead towards it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so that's been my story and my journey, a little bit of my story and journey with Christ. So
No, that is really incredible. And how confirmation after confirmation, and I think I told you it as well, but I'll say it on here that you are definitely meant to speak. And
man,
what,
come
yeah,
on.
you are meant to speak from the little I've seen for what you did at our young adults group 2 different times. It just comes out of you. It's in you. And I'm excited to see
Man,
how God uses you. So that is
man, I'm
amazing.
excited too because
Yeah.
it's yeah, like it's something that's coming to pass. To see something like this come to pass right in front of you is incredible, and I'm learning so much in this season.
Mm-hmm.
And before, I feel like I was so I talked about God's omnipresence versus God's manifest presence,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like I went throughout my entire life knowing that God was everywhere, and His
Yeah, the
omnipresence.
omnipresence. Yeah.
Yeah, and not understanding His manifest presence.
Mm.
And His manifest presence is when He actually chooses to dwell somewhere in a certain place at a particular time, in a particular form,
Yeah.
and it's completely different. There's a space in my house that recently became clean because of a storm that we had a year ago. We had a storm, we had a
Mm.
flood that came through our neighborhood. It was a national disaster. It ruined everything. We had 2 feet of water in our basement, and
Oh
it was
man.
really high. Yeah, destroyed everything. So we
Wow.
had to clean it up, right?
Yeah.
God was making space.
Mm.
He was
Yeah.
making
Right.
space. He was making himself a space in my house, and I didn't even know it.
Mm.
So our basement gets flooded, everything's destroyed. We have to rehab the basement, and this space is created.
Mm.
And so we started this kind of like podcast thing that's neither here nor there, but this space in particular suddenly became like a space for God, and where I pray at, where I read
Mm.
my Bible at, where I, go talk to God and see all of these different things. And this space is so full of His presence, is so different. Like
Mm.
it changes everything. It changed how I think, how I pray. When you feel like you're actually experiencing a being that's higher, that's perfect, that's holy, like you don't want to do anything to mess that up.
Yeah,
It'll
definitely.
cause you can't do anything but fall on your face. Like there's nothing else you can do when something like that is really like it's downstairs. Like it's crazy.
It's right there.
But yeah.
Uh,
So, but that was something I wanted to talk about too.
Yeah, no,
All right.
that's phenomenal. Just the whole
Yeah.
idea of making room, creating margin. I know, like, there's a crowd Paul
Yes.
leadership. We talk about things, and just having a space, having margin is so critical in leadership. And like for you, it was a specific space because when you have a space or you create margin, that allows you to create something new, as opposed to when things are cluttered or things are all over the place, or maybe it's not even
Yeah.
cluttered, maybe it's organized, but there's not room for
Yeah.
anything else. So I think that's really critical. Like what God,
Yes.
I would say that God did it, but God allowed the storm to do
Yes.
that so that it could create something new.
Yeah. Creating space, and it also applies in leadership.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need to create space for yourself so that you can have a clear mind, and a clear way to think and process things.
Mm-hmm.
Even it's so small, but having an organized and structured space anywhere in your house is
Yes.
very critical. Yeah, it's very critical in order for you to be able to function well. Like because when every space in your house is a clutter of a mess, your brain is processing all of that clutter. Like
Mm-hmm.
subconsciously, your brain is working through all of the mess that's sitting around your house. Even
Mm-hmm.
when you don't think it's affecting you,
Yeah,
it's affecting you. Like,
it's
and
true.
for example, if you had a baby, and I know because I have 3 babies of my own, if you have a baby and you walk into a room and everybody starts clapping, what does that baby do? Baby starts clapping, right?
Yeah.
Like subconsciously, because everybody else around them is clapping.
Mm-hmm.
It's internalized. The same thing is happening with your brain when there's clutter and mess everywhere. That clutter and that mess, that environment is all here being and just adding clutter and stress to your brain.
Are you wondering what's next? Has everything you tried failed? Or maybe you just feel stuck? Then coaching might be right for you. The coaching relationship is a relationship totally centered on you. If you're tired of running on the hamster wheel of life and want to start to see results, reach out to Incredible Paul for help. So what are you waiting for? Go to incredipaul.org/coaching, INCREDIPAUL.org/coaching, or at I am Incredipaul on all my socials. Or you can click the link in the bio for your free coaching session. I want to make sure you become the most incredible version of yourself.
But yeah. And so while we're on the topic of leadership,
yes,
I wanted to get into talking more so about like just some practical business stuff and give some nuggets to some people who may be in the job market. So
yes, definitely. The job market is there's opportunities here for sure, but I definitely want to hear what you have to say about that.
Yeah. So with all these recent layoffs that's happening in the tech industry, I know there's a lot of people out there are looking for a job, who and it's a very competitive market. So whereas just 2 or 3 years ago, there may be only 50 people applying to a job. Now there's 600 people applying to the same job because of all the layoffs and because people are becoming more tech savvy. The land is so much different. So how do you stand out in all of the chaos of applying to a job? These are my hacks.
Yeah, for sure.
This is how you can get
Jimmie's
this is
hacks.
how you can get ahead. And so this is what I really wanted to give your listeners too, and something that they can take away and take home. So one thing that you can do, if you're trying to apply to a job in the tech spaces, especially, the first thing you can do, this is what I did. You can go on Fiverr.com and have somebody rewrite your resume and make it more professional. You can pay them $25, however much, but go on Fiverr, have somebody rewrite your resume. You don't want to be fraudulent with it too. So, because the thing is, if you're fraudulent about your skills, it'll come out in the interview. However, if you have skills that can still kind of talk to some of the points, it's not fraudulent if you say, I have management skills versus when they ask, do you have management skills in blah, 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 so it may not be as specific as whatever software that they're using. But you can say, I know how to use a certain or particular software that's like this software. And that's the things that how you can kind of get around that. And then another thing too is, even if it's a little bit of a stretch, all you're really worried about is getting to the interview. A lot of the stuff in the job description is nonsense. This is key number 3, hack number 3. The job descriptions are often nonsense. You need 10 years of experience for an entry-level position for a software that's only been around for 3 years.
Yeah. Copy paste.
Like, some of the jobs are really ridiculous. I think I've run across a number of jobs that ask about a particular web language, because I'm a web developer. It's like they're asking for 6 years of experience in this particular language that's only been around for 3 years. You can't have 6 years of experience with something that's like brand spanking new, basically. And so it's like some of that stuff is it's nonsense. But really the reason they do that is to weed out people. So hack number 3 is apply anyway. That's hack number 3. Apply if you kind of fit into the role, apply anyway. If you are at a 0% of matching this job description, don't apply. But if you're at 70%, even if you're at 65%, apply anyway. Because it's the job description is most often nonsense. So
yeah, and to add to that real quick, especially with the years of experience, what they really want with the years of experience is to know that you understand and have a high level of knowledge of it. So if the years of experience is where you're hanging up on, but you really understand it, maybe you have like projects that you've done it deeper, you've led it, you may be better off than someone who has more years of experience that hasn't really seen it from start to finish. So I would say definitely that third key, apply anyway, is good.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are my 3 hacks that I really wanted to get out to people. Also, too, it's a very dog eat dog world out there as far as applying to jobs. Don't get discouraged. That's hack number 4. Don't get discouraged. I've applied to over 600 plus jobs, before, when in my job search. And that's because it's such a dog eat dog world. You're just going to have to apply to a lot of jobs in this, especially in the tech space. You're going to have to apply often and you're going to have to apply early. It's just going to take some time. It is what it is. If you want to break into the tech space, especially, you're going to have to apply a lot. Some people have been looking for jobs for 6 to 12 months, which is crazy to me. But don't get discouraged. It just, you have to apply often. And so, here's what I also employ people to do. This is number 6 now, is create a system for applying to jobs. And so I made it a goal of mine to apply to 10 jobs every day, until I found a job or got to an offer. So every day I was like, I'm going to apply to at least 10 places. And that's what I did.
Yeah, no, I think those are good. And actually, I do a lot of stuff helping people with careers, either from the beginning stage through like the offer stage. So I think it's really key that you are patient with the process, but being specific in networking, because I know what you said about applying a bunch of jobs, but I would challenge that as far as if you apply for a lot of jobs in the same way, you're not going to get different results, because Einstein said the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So one thing I would add is to evaluate what's happening, because if you continue to apply and you're not getting phone screens or interviews, then there's probably something. It's probably the resume part. So like what you talk, the Fiverr part, either on Fiverr, or I know there's a lot of different tools. So One Salting is something. So actually the founder of One Salting was on the previous podcast, and he talked a lot about the different AI tools and stuff. And a lot of stuff, they have a lot of free tools that they offer, and they're on all social media. So I definitely plug in for them, check them out, or Johnson Javier for a lot of career help. But then if you're not getting calls, resume. But then the other thing is, like, I've worked with people that they get calls, but when it gets to resume, when it gets to interview, there's like they were working their way up to the interview, and then now they got the interview. It's like, I don't know what to say. I don't know how to respond. I don't even know how to talk about myself. So if you are getting interviews but not getting called back, then that's something you need to work about. Are doing mock interviews, knowing how to respond as well, whether it's using the STAR method or the CAR method, whatever method you use to be concise in your answers. And there's also like little
boot camps too.
Yeah, there's
these boot camps are very beneficial because they walk you through all of that. I know Course Careers is a very good, solid boot camp. It's pretty cheap. It's like $400. But it not only does it teach you the skills you need, it also teaches you the interview process, and it opens you up to a network of people to hire you. So go through the boot camp if you need to, if that's necessary.
Yeah, definitely. That's but definitely utilize your resources. But throughout this whole process, you need to be evaluating what's going on. Don't just assume like, okay, I've been doing this, eventually it's going to work. Yes, it could happen, but really who you know is more important than what you know. Like, that's just the world we live in, as far as like what you mentioned. A key thing is like being there early. You can be there early, but if someone comes later and they know the hiring manager or they know someone, they're most likely going to go up to the top. So it's just the nature of the beast.
And some of these jobs too, some of these jobs are already taken before they even hit the job board because of people who they know. It's like them posting it to the job board is just a formality. Like it's already taken by somebody else in the company or a friend of a friend. They're just like, yeah, just go ahead and apply to it, for formality's sake. So that's another thing too that you run
Yeah,
into.
for sure. But definitely a key thing I would say is if you're not on LinkedIn, definitely get on LinkedIn or any
Get on LinkedIn.
to start networking with people even before you think you need a job. Like it's so critical. But I'm glad you shared those tips because like from the resume to the interview stage, I think especially the resume stage, so a lot of people just don't even get calls back. So they don't have time to like practice the interview. And so when
Yeah.
they do finally get an interview, they're like, I haven't got this far before. I don't know what I'm supposed to
Yeah.
do.
Right. You got to get up the bat.
For sure, for sure. But you kind of talked about it early on as far as what you do with photography and you're a web developer. So, how did you get into web developing? Like, is that something like you kind of discover while doing dance or like, yeah, talk me through that.
No, so I went to college for it. And once again, this is back to my typical black mom. She was like, she was like, it was probably one of the best pieces of advice I ever got. She told me, she's like, if you get a job in computers, you'll always have a job. And that stuck with me. And she was right. And she knew that. She saw how the world was going. She knew everything was going to be in tech. And so I went to college for initially, uh, computer, I don't know, something IT. But I had to change my role because I wasn't, change my major because I wasn't smart enough. Like, it just was, it's like the amount of math classes I was going to have to take was
I
ridiculous.
was like
Because
computer
my first
engineering.
semester, ironically enough, I had a 3.5 my first semester, but I remember I didn't have a life. Like I was drowning in homework. And I went to my counselor and I was like, how much more math I got? He was like, let me see. It was
Right.
like, and it was all this like crazy stuff. But the class that was like the nail in the coffin was applied statistics. And I was like, my mind cannot comprehend this stuff. And so I switched to computer multimedia graphics, which means I know a little about a lot of different things, which is how I fell into web development. So my degree allowed me to learn videography, photography, C++,
Oh
C sharp,
wow.
HTML, CSS. Yeah, I learned a little about a lot
Wow.
of different things. Yeah. And so my first job out of college, um, my first big boy job out of college was I call it the Inception Agency. It was a recruiting firm for other recruiting firms that happened to build websites for other recruiting firms. So it was like,
Whoa. That is
yeah,
inception for
Inception Agency. Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, so it was crazy. But that's how I got my hands dirty with web development, building the websites for those recruiting firms and building out job boards using WordPress actually. And so that's how I fell into web development. And from there, I started working at a marketing and advertising agency called Red Letter Communications. Shout out to everybody at Red Letter. And that was, yeah, we housed a lot of different websites. And our largest client was still outdoor power equipment. So the orange or white chainsaws, their website, my hands touched it, changed it, built it, all these different things. So yeah, and now that was mostly a homegrown CMS. And so for those of them people that don't know what a CMS is, that's an acronym for Content Management System.
okay.
That's what a
I was
CMS
gonna
is.
ask what that was.
And what, yeah. And so these are things like WordPress, Drupal, Shopify, Wix. Those are all content management systems, CMS. So if you built a WordPress site or a Wix site, you could potentially have yourself a six-figure career. If you know how to spin it right.
Yeah. So
And
is
you know what you're doing.
Squarespace one of those too?
Squarespace is also considered a CMS.
Okay.
So
That's the one I'm familiar with.
yeah. Actually, we use Squarespace to build a couple of government websites. So I remember. Yeah. A couple of officials use Squarespace. So the biggest CMS, and actually, I think the statistic is like 70% of websites and on the internet use WordPress, which is crazy. So not too many of them that don't use a CMS like WordPress.
Really?
hmm
The
And
WordPress.
consider it a low code or a no code environment.
Oh, okay. Because I feel like WordPress has a lot more coding than the rest of them.
It can, but it also is intuitive. So you can pretty much, you can find a plugin that does anything in WordPress because it's what they call open source.
Oh, okay.
Open source means, yeah, open source means anybody can build something to fit into your website, to plug into it. So you can find a plugin that does anything.
Yeah. So that's really cool. So how long have you been in web development now?
So I've been in web development for about 10 years now. Um, yeah, pretty extensively. And so my career has been crazy. I've worked for quite some large corporations. I worked for New Balance. Yeah, that was a really cool place to work. We sat on an indoor track. Our desks were in the middle of an indoor track, and all around the indoor track were shoes lined up, and they would get rid of the shoes every quarter. So yeah, they would do a giveaway every quarter, and it would be literally just like they would say, okay, we're going to do the shoe giveaway today at 3 o'clock. Everybody line up at 3. And then when 3 would roll around, there would be people circling the track all day, like trying to pick out which shoes they want to grab for the giveaway. But then 3 o'clock would come and they'd be like 3, 2, 1, go. And everybody's just going crazy. There's shoes and clothes flying
Oh, so
everywhere.
they
And I
just
came
grab
home.
it. It's not like a raffle or anything. Oh, wow.
Nope, not a raffle. It's literally just grab as much as you can and get out of there. And so I came home on several occasions with 2 big black trash bags of shoes and clothes because there was a mock store there too. So the mock store, they used to let us take stuff out of the mock store as well. But yeah, I'm actually in some of their ads too.
Really?
Yeah. So I was just like working at my desk one day and I was like, you have the look, come come on back here and take this photo. So
That's
yeah, I'm in a couple of their ads as well.
wow. Okay.
So I worked for New Balance. I worked for Wells Fargo. That was not fun. I did not like Wells Fargo. Did not like it. It's a bank. And so if you know anything about a bank, it's super like locked down. It's super straightforward. And as in the web developer space, we're kind of like this fun. I don't even want to say fun. We're just more lax in our dress, in our attire, and how we move and do things. And theirs is very old school. It's very like get here early and don't leave till 10 p.m. And it's like people look at you sideways. Yeah, people look at you sideways when you leave at 5 o'clock.
Really?
Like yeah. So it was like, yeah, it was very awkward. I didn't like Wells Fargo because it was too corporate. Versus some of the other places I worked, they were just like the normal amount of corporate.
Yeah, fair enough.
So,
What was a favorite place that you worked?
my favorite place that I worked, probably New Balance. To be honest, New Balance, yeah, just because the clothes were cool, the environment was cool. I was building cool things. The landing pages that I was building were highly interactive. So like you would land on a page and a shoe would like fly onto the page, and then you would click the shoe and it would scroll you down the page to that shoe. Product thing, accordion would open up and you select your shoe size. It was like really, it was really cool. Like that was one of the coolest jobs I had was there. And then I worked for Anheuser-Busch. That was a close second. We were, fully remote. So that was, well, not fully remote. We were hybrid, go, um, going back into office, but for the most part, we were kind of remote. And so that was pretty cool. We were doing some cool stuff. So
Awesome.
yeah, that was that.
So that's really good. I really appreciate you being on the podcast. We're about out of time, but I don't know if there's anything that we haven't talked about yourself or your journey that you want the listeners to know about you before we close out.
Man, I just want to talk about Jesus.
Yeah,
I
for sure.
don't even know like hard transition, but yeah, God is teaching me a lot in this season, and I've already deemed myself as a recovering skeptic, and I feel like this is something that I feel like the Holy Spirit literally just dropped in on me. So I was a skeptic, and because I saw people quote unquote pretending, it caused me to not believe. But I didn't know that the people that were pretending were evidence of the people that were authentic. Like, and it blew my mind, because you can't have people that pretend without having something that's authentic. You can't have a fake gospel without having an authentic gospel. And you can't have, like, it blew my mind. You can't have one without the other. And so it deepened my faith. And I think my generation in particular, we want so much information and evidence, and we have all the information and evidence we need in order to believe in a God that created this world. The evidence is all around you. It's right in front of you. The fact that people vehemently reject Jesus and God is evidence that there was a Jesus, that there is a God. The fact that they oppose it so much is the sheer evidence of his existence. And that, or otherwise, they would be indifferent about it.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
because people are indifferent about most things, but not when it comes to Jesus or God. That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's a really good thought. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure.
So if I could,
oh, go ahead.
No, I said if I could leave people with anything, it's just that if you're a skeptic, keep asking questions, keep digging, keep pursuing the answers, because I guarantee you those answers that you're going to find and run into are going to lead you to a God that is holy and perfect. So keep pursuing.
Keep pursuing. I like it. Well, I want to make sure people know how to find you, either socials or website. And I'll make sure it comes up on the screen for those of you who are listening. But if you're watching, I guess for those of you who are watching, if you're listening, you'll be able to hear it. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if people want to find me, I'm pretty much Jimmie Miller on everything. I'm Jim on Instagram. If you want to see my photography, it's Jimmie the Photographer, all one word together. If you want my personal stuff, it's _ Jimmie, JIMMIE, _ Miller, MILLER, with the underscore. On TikTok, I think I'm Jimmie Miller on there too. YouTube, you can just do @Jimmie Miller. And my website is JimmieMiller.com. And again, I spell my name with an IE and not a Y. So.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that to make sure that people know how to find you.
Yep.
And it'll be in the show notes as well if you're listening to this. And if you're just listening to it, I'd say definitely watch it as well. It's a lot better experience. But Jimmie, it's been an honor. It's been really fun having you on the podcast, just really sharing your heart, sharing the transformation that Jesus has made in you. I can really see it. It's evident, as well as all the stuff that you've been able to do with dance and with the web developing. And I know there's so much more that we didn't get into, because if we were doing that, we'd probably be talking all day. But this isn't a day-long podcast. It's like 5 minutes to an hour. So we'll keep it at this. But I am super excited to see where you go as far as speaking. I think this is kind of like a moment in time that you can look back and talk about where you are right now. And I'm excited to see, like, a year from now, 5 years from now, how far you've come, and to have this moment to look back on. But
yeah, man. And thank you so much for having me on. I just wanted to give you your flowers.
Thank you.
Like, I'm so grateful to be on your podcast. There's some heavy hitters on your podcast, like Pastor Blunt.
Yeah.
So I'm honored and I'm grateful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure having you. But for everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed hearing Jimmie's story, learning from, sometimes you may not like something or love something when you first start at it, like he did with dance, and then he fell in love with it, started to teach it as well, and then didn't even recognize it as a strength until he actually got to watch it. And then if you're not a person of faith, like I would say, if you're a skeptic, whatever, just keep asking questions. I think let God or the Holy Spirit lead you to what he wants you to do. I won't push it any further than that, because ultimately it's up to you, and God is not just gonna blindside you. He's a gentleman, so he wants you to make the decision on your own. But I hope you enjoyed this podcast. You learned something, so you can keep being incredible.
Be sure to rate and review this podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform. We'll see you here next time. And be incredible. Incredible.